So identity is very, very important. These are some stats from last year. So 81% of hacking breaches is based around stolen and or weak passwords. Hacking attack happens every 39 seconds, which is just an outrageous statistic, I think. And then 80% of employees are using unauthorized applications for work because obviously there's no controls in place and they can sign up for their own Dropbox account and start putting data in it, for example. Touching on the whole perimeter again, on premise, you have your firewalls and you protect what comes in and out of your environment from that point of view at a very, very high level. Obviously, that still has a place. But when you move to the cloud, most of the services that you're going to be using, they're all outside your firewalls. So the identity becomes your control plane effectively on how people get access to those services. And using something like Azure Active Directory, you can actually tie in other third-party applications to that. So the controls you build in there, you can then start improving the security to access all your other cloud services as well. So sort of core to anything identity-wise in 365 and in the cloud, in my opinion, is the use of multi-factor authentication and conditional access. It just has to be done because it will stop the majority of basic password-based attacks. The moment someone phishes you, gets your username, gets your password, and they try and log in from an untrusted location, you're going to get a prompt on your MFA app saying someone's trying to log in. You can reject that, and that attack stopped straight away in its tracks. Depending on how strict your rules are, you could have conditional access rules that restrict an organization, a user coming in if it's on an untrusted device, doesn't meet your compliance standards, isn't coming from a trusted IP. So you can layer these up depending on your own particular security postures and your risk levels. The other key aspect of an identity is the type of identity. You have sort of two types. You have synchronized identity, which will synchronize your objects from Active Directory on premise, or you have a pure cloud only, which is a separate set of credentials that's managed purely in the cloud. The synchronized is probably the most common approach that I've seen. Some of the key things that you've got to make sure happen before you synchronize is that you have unique attributes across all those users. Any conflicts, they'll be flagged and you won't be synchronize that username up. One of the implications of going with synchronized is you do have to maintain an Exchange hybrid server in your environment because Exchange management tools are the only supported methods for editing the attributes in Active Directory for Exchange. One positive is the Exchange hybrid license is complementary. It's part of your 365 subscription. So as long as you don't store any data in that Exchange server, it's just a management server. You haven't got to pay for an Exchange server license. Most organizations have an existing environment and you're going to be migrating from on-prem to 365. So synchronized gives that ability to have the same username and password for your users, whether they're accessing on-premise devices and services or accessing cloud services, which is a much better experience from an end user point of view. And it also doesn't block you from going to cloud only in the future if you decide to, or when you get to the point where you retire your on-prem infrastructure completely. So yeah, you're not blocking yourself out by doing that. The cloud only approach. So if you do have an Active Directory on-prem and you're accessing services that way still, and then you go cloud only, you're going to have potentially a completely different username format. You're going to have to maintain 2 passwords and make sure that they're remembered from a end user point of view. They won't be synchronized. So from an end user point of view, it could be pretty jarring. And if you then access your domain joined laptop, for example, you log in and you open up Outlook, you're going to get prompted to then re-authenticate to 365 because it's a different identity model. So things like that will need to be considered. If you're a startup and you're going pure cloud only is obviously the way to go. You haven't got to be building Active Directory domain controllers, adding in Exchange hybrid servers, etc., which just adds overhead from a management point of view. You can be purely cloud-based and use that to integrate going forwards. And I mentioned earlier on, you can move from the synchronized identity to cloud only in the future. Technically, you can go back the other way as well if you ever need to. It's a little bit messier, but it is possible.